right, so we are going to be talking about post-quantum cryptography. And the acronym for that, PQC, has been floating around for quite a while. And I got a lot of slides here for you guys today. And this is all about preparing. At a CISO conference, I think the best thing that needs to be happening right now is we need to get a little bit past awareness. I was talking with some analysts very recently about what's the amount of penetration within the CISO population that are actually aware of the post-quantum problem that they all face. And for those of you who are, I'm getting some faces like, what are you talking about? You're my exact audience today, because there's some big issues for you in the next 5 years. And the thing is, though, is that it's not a problem that's going to be in 5 years, therefore you can ignore it. It's a problem you have to start preparing for now. So who the heck am I? Just a couple words. I've been in the cryptography and public key infrastructure business for getting close to 30 years. I actually hold a patent in automotive cryptography. I've been speaking publicly for probably close to 20 years on this topic. So this kind of interaction with the public is exactly what, it's part of my mandate, what I do, okay? But I'm not just a sales shill. I am also a researcher in this topic and an innovator within this topic, okay? That's why you guys are listening to me today on this topic. Okay, I want you guys to start thinking about cryptographic assets. And what's one of the most common cryptographic assets you have under your purview as CISOs? And that's digital certificates. You'll also see it in raw cryptographic key pairs. You'll also see it in your symmetric tokens that you're using for encryption, okay? So think about cryptography. Think about what is the underneath that cryptography down a couple layers. There are cryptographic algorithms that are at risk due to quantum computers. All right? And because of the fact that the cryptographic algorithms that we've been using for the past 30 years have remained completely stable, there are people through their entire careers have never had to think about it. CISOs have almost never had to think about this at all. But who does this problem affect? Well, I guarantee that if you have electricity going to your office, it affects you. Because this technology that's going to be affected is utterly ubiquitous. So when I asked the question in that previous slide, do you know where all your cryptographic assets are? You might say to me, yeah, well, I have SSL certificates for my website, but that's about all I'm worried about. How many of you guys are running Kubernetes clusters? Right, there's a bunch. And how many of you know that there are, inside of a Kubernetes cluster, are certificate authorities that are directly affected by this? That's just one out of probably hundreds of examples of where you have cryptographic assets, okay? Now, we faced large problems like this before. The Y2K problem. For those of you who are old enough, we all woke up on January 1st, 2000, and computers were working. Was that because it wasn't a problem? No, it was because we took 5 to 10 years and we actually decided to have a top-down driven, just complete work event where we had to take inventory of where are all the places where I have the Y2K problem. And therefore, it got solved in time. And therefore, there's a lot of hope because we've taken on these kinds of problems before. So what is the problem? And let's reframe a very, very complex topic. And by the way, the reason I use these cave images or Lascaux cave images that generated by AI, the reason I use them is kind of tongue-in-cheek. And it's because I think this is where we're at in terms of our level of understanding. We are still at the caveman level of understanding the problem. So this comes out of a sense of humility. This doesn't come out of a sense of we know everything. And I need your help as CISOs to help solve this problem. So let's frame the problem. Here it is. Quantum computers can factorize prime numbers very, very rapidly. And that is unfortunately the basis of today's cryptographic algorithms. And so when we get a quantum computer with a sufficient number of stable qubits, that's a whole other topic, then unfortunately the RSA algorithm and the ECC algorithm, elliptic curve cryptography, will be deprecated. And that's coming very fast. Where are those algorithms used? I'm going to show you exactly where they're being used. Therefore, without any exaggeration, the computational basis, the reason why cryptography works, is under threat. And therefore, we need agility within our cryptographic systems, all right? So NIST, the standards body out of the United States, has just declared they're not even waiting for quantum computers to develop. There will be a deprecation of RSA and ECC in 2030. That's how long you have. Therefore, let's back up. If you actually have systems that are running these algorithms, and you do, trust me, you do, then those systems need to change before 2030. Otherwise, you will have operational systems that are utterly insecure. Let that sink in. Have we dealt with this before? Yes, we have. The SHA-1 hashing algorithm, right? Which, that's getting into the weeds. But these are the things that I think as CISOs, you guys need to know this stuff. Look at the history of the SHA-1 algorithm. It was deprecated because computers were sufficiently capable of breaking it within about 30 minutes. Therefore, any digital certificate that was hashed with SHA-1 was basically completely insecure. Okay? So we've dealt with this before. How well did we do dealing with SHA-1? We failed miserably. And you know why? It's because we didn't know where all our cryptographic assets were. That is the reason we failed with SHA-1. Because people didn't do the work of understanding that first slide. You can't manage what you don't know you have. You need to take inventory of your cryptographic assets. So, am I talking about the other cryptographic algorithms that you guys might be, and are guarantee are working with? AES-256 and all the various hashing algorithms. They're already, in a way, quantum resistant. And I'll tell you why. It's because Grover's algorithm is not sufficiently fast to be able to break those algorithms right now. So what are we actually talking about? What's the highest risk? It's data in transit and signing mechanisms. Anything that's digitally signed is at risk. Anything that is encrypted with data in transit, that's where RSA and ECC are most often used. So look there first. Let's dive into that problem just a little bit further. So the harvest and decrypt problem. How many have not heard that term yet? Please, I want to hear. How many of you have? So the majority have, but there's still many who have not. I would love to spend the entire 40 minutes just talking about the harvest and decrypt problem. It's this. If you have stuff right now that is being encrypted in transit, secrets that are encrypted in transit that are of use to your adversary, they will be recorded in an encrypted state and decrypted in 5 years. So it's not just about taking inventory of your cryptographic assets. It's taking inventory of what are my critical secrets that are being encrypted in transit right now? Do I have signed documents that, perhaps as a regulated industry, I will be at risk if it were to be alterable in 5 years? Insurance document, healthcare records, you name it. It all comes underneath the harvest and decrypt problem, okay? signing and authentication are also at risk, right? So in other words, authentication will become a risk a little later, but in other words, it will come to the point where a lot of authentication mechanisms also rely on those cryptographic algorithms that are at risk, and therefore the bad guys will be able to log in as you. So those systems also need to be inventoried and eventually changed. So I'm not going to go through the whole list, but this is a more complete list of what are the risks, okay? And some of these things are quite complex, such as the cryptographic algorithms that are going to replace RSA and ECC have much larger signatures. And that's a problem for the CA industry where I'm from, which is the mechanism that we're going to sign, the mechanism that we're going to encrypt, the way the web browsers will work has to change, okay? Harvest and decrypt. And by the way, a colleague of mine, Tim Callan, and I have a podcast. I want to mention it simply because that's where you can go and get a lot more information about this. For those of you who raised your hand, you did not hear about harvest and decrypt, episode 256, we go right into depth about the harvest and decrypt problem. Trust me, yes? Root causes. There's a little logo. At the very end, I will actually show the logo, and you'll see it. It's called the Root Causes Podcast. Tim Callan, Jason Sirocco. So a lot of people say to me, Jay, quantum computers are advancing, but they're not advancing quickly enough for me to care. The problem, though, is that you have a problem right now. Anything that has been recorded by the bad guy from your network will be decrypted. In other words, the train's already left the building for several years of your data. So taking inventory now so that you can start to protect those important secrets later is critical at this point. So what makes a good cryptographic algorithm? RSA is actually based on the difficulty of being able to figure out what combination of prime numbers were multiplied together. Now, 9's a prime number. That's easy to guess. I pulled that right out of my mind. Thing is, though, is that when you start to get extremely large prime numbers, digital computers have a very hard time. They have to brute force themselves. And that's why whenever you hear, oh, it'll take 3 million years for a normal computer to break RSA, that's the reason why. It's the difficulty based on finding and factorizing large prime numbers. For elliptic curve cryptography, it's similar. It's based on factorization of the mathematics behind an elliptic curve. I'm not going to get into that too much, but that's the basis of why ECC cryptography works. The problem is that quantum computers will render RSA and ECC easy to break. Okay? That's the underlying problem. So when we talk about new math, what's the new math that is quantum resistant? Well, one of the most popular ones right now is lattice. And lattice-based mathematics is based on the problem of take points on a grid and turn that into multi-dimensional space. That's very hard to imagine. And then twist it. Twist that space. And then ask the computer to find what 2 points are the closest together in that series of millions and millions and millions of points. It's nearly impossible for any computer to do it, even a quantum computer. Cool, eh? So NIST has selected, this is where we're at in our industry right now. NIST actually has selected certain forms of math and certain standards and has fully standardized several of them. And in fact, we'll get into that list right now. So ML-Chem, ML-DSA, and SLH-DSA. Instead of saying RSA or ECC, these are the new algorithms. Those are the ones you got to get on the tip of your tongue, because those are going to be the replacements. Okay? And the way that the wording is, ML stands for module lattice. So that's what math is the cryptographic algorithm based on. And then the second set of letters is key encapsulation, right? Or it is basically whatever it is actually doing for you, a digital signature algorithm in the case of MLDSA. And they come in other words as well, right? The original names of them were crystals kyber, crystals dilithium, and now they actually have FIPS names as well, FIPS 203, FIPS 204. I put this slide here. I know it's in the weeds, but you guys who used to be experts, or still are experts in RSA or ECC, these are the new ones that you need to be aware of. And here's what's different. You didn't have a large menu in the past. You really only had to select between RSA or ECC. Now you've got to select between all sorts of alternatives that typically is based on the key sizes. And so therefore, not only do you have to be an expert in cryptography in a most basic sense, you now have to understand, you now have to choose off a menu what's best for you. And I think that that's going to be a challenge for those of you who never had to think about that before. And if you'd like the basis of understanding, please check out the podcast. As you can see, I put the reference there. So what have I learned in the last 5 years of covering this? Because Tim and I have been covering this now for over 5 years. And the NIST has selected its options. We have had options chosen by NIST and have also spectacularly failed after they were selected. So if you think that that list is going to stay static of the cryptographic algorithms available to you, it will not remain static. That's an extra challenge that you're all facing. Just to add a little bit of spice to the recipe here. So,
how large are these keys?
Okay, MLDSA, for example.
Many megs?
No, we were talking about kilobytes, but MLDSA is exactly 4 to 5 times larger than RSA. So it breaks a lot of things. Yeah. That's the truth. So we're not talking 100 times larger, but we are talking 4 to 5, and that's enough to break things. So you have to keep it in mind. And I know for us as a CA, that's a gigantic consideration. Okay? So therefore, we could also wake up tomorrow morning and have RSA deprecated. So we might all have to move to ECC, a classic algorithm. Therefore, I'm going to introduce the term, if you haven't heard it before, cryptographic agility. Cryptographic agility is what I'm referring to here. It's absolutely necessary. That's what you guys should all be aspiring to, is not only should you take inventory of your cryptographic assets, but when you're learning how to swap out cryptographic algorithms and systems, your ultimate goal and aspiration should be to become crypto agile and have cryptographic agility. So how the heck do you do that? You have to start getting your hands dirty. That means actually in implementing test systems, test private CAs to start, that is actually hooked up to generating cryptographic key pairs that are based off of these new algorithms, and then measuring how long it takes how long did it take to generate the keys? What's the latency rates? So, and I can go on and on and on about how you get your hands dirty, and we can talk about that, this evening. But suffice to say that that's a big step right now that you all need to be taking. So what's the order of events? Well, first, NIST had to actually choose some early standards. That's already happened. The second step is starting right now. And in fact, one of the podcasts that's available, that's not even listed because it's brand new, Sophia Selly, who's actually coordinating the PQC efforts at IETF, she was on our podcast. And she was talking about all the various IETF working groups that are being spun up right now to deal with, all right, here's the 15 to 20 to 30 new standards we need to be able to define what are going to be in the new PQC products. So we're still in the middle of that phase right now. And then once IETF does their work, things like the CA browser forum need to go off and take what IETF tells us to do and then start to build the frameworks and the rules around, all right, what is going to be the new certificate profiles that we're all going to live with, right? That's going to be a third. And then, of course, right, it goes on and on from there. But we are still in that second phase with IETF. That's where truly we are right now. That Y2K analogy I want to bring up again, it was solved because it was top-down driven. In other words, don't let your Linux web administrators determine whether PQC is a problem or not. The risk is owned by your executive leadership team. And I think you as CISOs need to be extremely influential in being the type of people to kick this back to your board, kick this back to your C-levels, and don't just say to your technical teams, hey, you just figure this out. We are going to fail miserably unless the executive leadership teams buy into the risk that is associated with this problem. Because if you tell your executive leadership team, envision your company with operational but insecure systems for years because we didn't start right away, and you didn't warn them about that now, I think you're doing a very big disservice to the organizations you work for. So there's a lot that has to happen, right? The private CAs you have running underneath your Kubernetes clusters right now probably need to be replaced. That's scary, isn't it? Like, let that sink in for a moment. So this isn't just, well, we're just going to wait for a Sectigo to work with its competitors and partners to put out post-quantum publicly trusted certificates. That's the least of our problems. We'll get there. Well, we'll get there in time. But what about you guys who have deeply ensconced usages of RSA and ECC that are going to be deprecated soon? Any of you guys running Microsoft CA? What's the roadmap that Microsoft has to get? There is no roadmap. There is no roadmap. Wow. You're going to be running MSCA past 2030, and it's literally deprecated system. This is going to be my homework to you guys. It's a rhetorical question and statement right now. But could you guys tell me every single place where you are running RSA and ECC right now? That is your homework. That is literally your homework. So let's go into that and ask ourselves the tough questions. I am defining your homework right now. All security endeavors begin with an inventory. Okay? You can't manage what you don't know you have. Go right back to slide 1. So it's not just where am I using RSA and ECC, but what critical secrets am I encrypting and signing with RSA and ECC? In other words, because of the harvest and decrypt problem, you have to know take inventory of your critical secrets. Do you have PII being encrypted in transit? I bet you all of us do. Do you know all the places and the times that is encrypted? That's a question you need to ask yourselves. All right. What secrets right now are being transmitted by your systems that you would not want decrypted and made public by 2029? That is a question you have to answer. What digitally signed documents do you have right now would you not want altered or made public by 2029? If you're in a regulated industry, like, my God, that could be a lot of things. A lot of things. Therefore, what I'm saying is this. Don't just toss it to like, oh yeah, my Linux web administrator, I'll let them figure it out. No, this is going to be a cross-disciplinary effort across your organization. So I'm not going to read off the whole slide here, but I think you guys need to understand what moving towards crypto agility, what it means? And in order to achieve crypto agility, this is a set of ideas that I need you guys to embrace with me. And that is, you need visibility, you need automation, and you need governance everywhere. And if you guys have read Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 from NIST, I mean, governance came right up to the top. In other words, governance people need to actually start working with people who are on the ground. That's what NIST 2.0, if you get nothing out of that document, that's what they're asking for. And this problem right here, this is why Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 and this whole crypto agility thing, it's all coming together, guys. Okay? They see the future, and you guys need to be on that path. So it goes far beyond PQC, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. The other problem you guys have is this. Certificate lifespans are going down to 47 days. In other words, you're no longer going to be able to manually renew your certificates every 47 days, especially when you're dealing with thousands of certificates. The days of doing things manually are gone. So that word automation that you saw earlier, in other words, you cannot achieve cryptographic agility without certificate agility. You cannot achieve cryptographic agility without certificate agility. These are the 7 reasons why you absolutely want shorter certificate lifespans. Do you guys know what your certificate lifespans are on your Kubernetes clusters? It should be 2 hours max. They literally should be nearly ephemeral. In other words, they die as soon as they're used. Otherwise, you've basically given the keys to the bad guys. Are you aware of that? What is the certificate lifespan of your private systems? And if you don't know, get to knowing. Because cryptographic agility is not achieved without certificate agility. How do you achieve certificate agility? With certificate lifecycle management. Okay? And therefore, what is CLM giving you? It's giving you visibility, it's giving you automation. In other words, if you implement certificate lifecycle management, you've already taken the first and second steps towards being ready for the post-quantum problem. And in fact, right, this is a way of thinking about it. In other words, if you're still managing your certificates in a spreadsheet, you're level 0. And unfortunately, a lot of people are still managing their certificates from a spreadsheet. And I know this because almost every morning I get the news report saying which companies had major outages because their certificate wasn't renewed on time. Amazing to me. And so therefore, let's say you have a Let's Encrypt certificate. Well, you have automation. You're level 1. Hallelujah. You've got Acme automating your certificate, but you have no visibility because there's no place to log in with Let's Encrypt to actually look at which certificates have been issued to your systems. And then with discovery, this is a beautiful pillar of CLM, which is what are all of the certificates I am using in my organization today. Therefore, you use a good CLM tool to do that. And if you have that good CLM tool, you're level 3 on the maturity level. Okay? And to me, level 4 is all about, did you build that cross-disciplinary group to actually understand all your cryptographic assets? That's level 4. And then level 5 is what we're all aspiring to. None of us are there yet, but this is what we should all be aspiring to, and we have to get there by 2030. Okay, I talked about cryptographic center of excellence. This should be top-down driven. A cryptographic center of excellence, its ultimate output should be that inventory. But it also should be, how are we going to take advantage of all of this upending of our cryptographic systems and assets to do things better than we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. When you implemented your MSCA 15 years ago, it's a different world right now. And therefore, there's a lot of opportunity for innovation in how you protect your secrets today compared to the way you did it a decade and a half ago. And that's what your cryptographic center of excellence should be outputting. I can't repeat this enough, okay? Risk decisions should not be in the hands of your command line guys, okay? Do not throw this to your Linux administrators. They don't own the risk in your organization. Yes, they are the smart technical people, but they should merely be at the seat, one of the seats in the cryptographic center of excellence. They should not be driving the Titanic into the iceberg, because that's where they're going to drive it. So cryptographic ability, there's a lot of words on this slide. Let me make it real simple for you. How many of you know how much RSA certificates you're using versus ECC certificates? If you know that, I'll shake your hand, because it's very rare anybody even knows or cares. You'll really care as a CISO if tomorrow morning NIST says RSA is deprecated because somebody came up with quadratic mathematics to destroy RSA. All of a sudden, you're going to have an extremely long set of nights with no sleeping going, what was that thing Jay told me at the CyberX conference? Because you're going to have to swap out all your cryptographic assets overnight. If you're ready for that with the usage of hybrid certificates, etc., then you're crypto agile. But very few people are. In other words, when do you need to be crypto agile? Now. Lots and lots of words, okay? I leave this for you guys to check out. So, remember I said to you, one of the most important things for you guys to do is to get your hands dirty. And for the longest time, that's all I could say about it. You should get your hands dirty. Now I'm going to tell you how you can get your hands dirty. And I'm very proud to say that we've put together the building blocks. In other words, the Lego blocks of what will become your future systems that are crypto agile is now something we call post-quantum cryptography labs, PQC labs, which is, if you really, Jason, what is that? It is basically the Lego building blocks of building cryptographic key pairs that are quantum resistant, that are issued securely, and then brought into a certificate authority, turned into certificates, and then able to be used by your systems for authentication, for signing, for whatever you need, okay? And we partnered with Crypto4A, Canadian HSM vendor. Bruno Couillard is the gentleman behind that, if you know him, right? I wish he could have been here today. He got caught up with a few things. But this is the beautiful thing. It's the industry's very first HSM hooked up to a private CA issuing certificates that are full NIST standard. There's nobody else doing that level today. There's a lot of people messing around with draft standards. You'll hear, we are completely HSM agnostic, Talus, right, etc. I was an HSM firmware programmer back in 1996, by the way, just to show you how far back that goes. And the beauty of this is that it's fully end-to-end, full standards, with certificates that you can touch and smell and hear and get your hands dirty with it. So in other words, you can start to do measurements such as how long did it take for this certificate to be issued? How long did it take for the keys to be issued? How do I hook these things up to my systems? We're ready for you, okay? So in other words, Crypto4A is doing the hard work of generating the MLDSA key pairs, and Sectigo is doing the rest. In other words, doing what a post-quantum resistant private certificate authority is supposed to do. Oh, sorry. Anybody? Good stuff. So it is a sandbox environment. In other words, you might say to me, Jason, where's the fully productized post-quantum CA? My answer is this. You probably wouldn't want one right now because what did I say way earlier in the presentation? You actually need IETF to actually make a number of standards still, and then we'll be ready to productize a product for you. But right now, you have all the building blocks pre-IETF to start understanding. So I'm going to end off right now with, if you didn't hear this enough, Tim and I won a Webby Award. Thank you. And I would really love, thank you. If you are curious at all about this topic, anything regarding cryptographic algorithms, cryptography in general, PKI, we talk a lot about cybersecurity in general as well. Please check out the podcast, okay? And that's it.